Hi, I'm Jim Gordon, and welcome to another edition of Small Cap Interviews on location at VRIC in Vancouver. This product I'm holding right here, silver, just hit over $100 US, which leads to a perfect time for us to welcome back advocate, author, and writer Peter Krauth. He joins us next. And joining us now here at the table is author and moderator Peter Krauth. Peter, it's every January we sit and chat. Welcome back.
Thanks so much, Jim. I'm happy to be here.
Great to have you. And we're here on location, of course, at VRIC, and we pulled you off a very busy floor, a lot of activity over there across the street at the convention center. I got to ask you right off the bat, we're going to get into a lot of different things, but the price of silver as we're doing this interview is over $100. This must be one of the biggest jumps in your history of covering silver.
It's very exciting. Been waiting for a while for this, expecting it, but still waiting patiently.
Yeah.
And it is a pretty big deal. It has, however, not taken over its inflation adjusted high, all-time high.
Right. Which was when?
So in 1980, it was $50. If you adjust for inflation, we would be at over $200.
Right.
And the 2011 high of around just below $50 is about where we are right now. Say, the $80 to $100 range, depending what you use for inflation. But we've essentially matched the 2011 high.
I have to ask, when all things are going up, there's a chance things will go down. You're the expert. Do you see that as a possibility?
Well, given the rapidity of this rise, I mean, it took 45 years to match the nominal $50 high. To finally take that out, which was last October, and continue to move higher. So it took 45 years to do that, and then it took 3 months to double to $100. So this has been pretty breathtaking, pretty relentless, and I think it would be unrealistic to say that we're not at a risk right now of some kind of a meaningful correction. Could be 15, could be 30%.
Right.
But people need to be prepared for that. I would treat that as an opportunity.
Okay. Hey, let's talk a little more about you. I talked about some of the things you do off the top. You recently launched a free newsletter called The Silver Advisor. Tell us more about that.
Okay. So actually, about a year ago, we have companies that we follow their news. And what we do is any material news that comes out, we will review, analyze, summarize, comment on same day.
Okay.
So that goes out to our email list, and then it goes on our website, and people can follow that. It's a free letter, so it's a way to start following, companies in the silver space at no cost.
There have been a lot of headlines that I've been wanting to talk to you about. Again, you're the expert. The significance of Samsung, their new EV battery with high silver content. Tell us more about that.
So they started talking about this a few years ago. This is still in development, likely to come out either later this year or at some point earlier next year. That's sort of the timeline that we're seeing. For me, it should be a game changer. This battery is supposed to have an 800 kilometer range, essentially double of the best of the ranges that we have right now. We're looking at a 9-minute recharge.
9
minutes. Not overnight.
No, I was going to say 9. Okay.
And then we're also looking at about half the weight and size of current batteries. So this really would be a game changer. Now, of course, they will, like anything, they come out on the more expensive side. It's likely that it's going to be, sort of the luxury vehicle market that will see them first.
Sure. Yeah.
That will trickle down. But they need a lot of silver. That's the interesting part.
You lead me beautifully into my next question. The rumors about Samsung investing in mining companies to secure the greater supply need.
Exactly.
Tell us more.
So I'm aware of 2 companies, at least in Mexico. Now, Mexico is the world's largest silver producer by far. And there are 2 companies I'm aware of that have a deal with Samsung. And so they are like offtake agreements. So Samsung has invested with them. One of them is Silver Storm, and the other is Avino, silver and gold. And so Samsung has an agreement to buy the silver as it comes out of the ground, so they can secure a reasonable supply of the metal.
Elon Musk, who is rarely out of the news, he is concerned with the price of silver. The Guardian UK Business Magazine also cited concerns amongst industrial consumers. Does he have a point? Are you concerned?
I mean, I do agree that, going from, especially from, say, $30 silver to $100 silver in a matter of a year or so, that does cause stresses for manufacturers
Yeah.
that rely on the silver to produce their goods, whether that's solar panels or, I mean, the biggest stress is going to be on a manufacturer of a product that uses a lot of silver in that product.
Sure.
It needs to be said that a lot of silver is used in very, very small quantities. If you think of things like, relays in switches, if you think of things like microprocessors, all of these things use silver, but very tiny amounts. So they can typically either, I would think typically a manufacturer will either absorb the cost for a little while and ultimately start to pass it on. But if you are something like a solar panel manufacturer, it's very different.
Right.
Even at lower cost, they're still at maybe 15-20% of the overall cost of the panel. So if that portion has essentially tripled in price, it starts to become problematic. I wouldn't be surprised, frankly, to see governments, because solar is the cheapest form of new energy for utilities.
Right.
I would not be surprised to start seeing government step in and actually subsidizing solar panel installation. So, which will cause more inflation, which could cause silver to go up even farther, but we'll have to see how that goes.
Let's continue on with concerns and governments. New restrictions on silver exports from China, which began at the beginning of this year. Are there great concerns about that where you sit?
So some people do have great concerns about it. I've kind of got mixed feelings about it. I'm not sure it's going to be the biggest sort of issue. They've had controls to some extent. Really what it was that companies who were exporting had to be producing a certain or refining a certain amount of silver, and they had to have been exporting a certain amount of silver so that they could have a license. So what they've really done is they've sort of upped the game a little bit and said, we need sort of bigger players. We're going to allow bigger players to continue exporting. So yes, that could sort of limit restrictions somewhat. I think what's being missed, which is more important to me, is the fact that China controls 60 to 70% of the world's silver refining. And so if you need silver in its pure form after it comes out of the ground, a lot of it goes through China. So we are reliant on China just to get that pure silver product.
Does that add, you just saying that, does that add another layer of concern for the Americans in that they only have a local supply of 25% of what they consume? Are they leading the charge, for lack of a better phrase, out of fear of what we're talking about right now?
Well, the numbers that I have are that it's closer to about, it's actually a little more than half, that they actually import about 43% of the silver that they consume. Still a big number. But yes, and I think that's starting to show in a couple of ways. They, for the first time last year, added silver to their critical minerals list. That was a pretty big deal. And now they're talking about starting a strategic minerals reserve, putting $2.5 billion towards that. And from what I've seen, Trump is now telling some of his people to potentially looking at price floors on some of these minerals. So that could do all kinds of things to the silver market.
I'm just curious, where does Canada, can you answer that? Where does Canada sit with local supply and what they consume?
I don't know how much they import or we import in Canada. We're not a big player in terms of silver production, but we're likely also not the biggest consumer. And we do produce a fair amount. We do have silver mines or silver as byproduct, but there are much bigger players in the market.
Let's move to another big country, Russia, which is shifting from gold to silver for strategic reserves. You must have thoughts on that, Peter.
I do. So that for me is significant. I believe that part of that is one they see the strategic aspects of silver in industry and now as money, and the fact that their assets were frozen, and when they moved into Ukraine, they want to build reserves of what others consider money and critical.
Right.
So their central bank has started to buy more silver, added platinum and palladium to the metals that they're buying. We've seen since then, Saudi Arabia has said that they're started to do the same thing. It's not big numbers, but you know, I would assume, especially certain central banks aren't obligated to report some of these things. Saudi Arabia has reported that they bought, I think it was the equivalent, about $40 million split between silver miners through an ETF and a physical silver ETF. My thoughts are that you'd have to imagine that if they're coming out and saying it, there must be a number of others who are doing it without saying it. So wouldn't be surprised that's been adding to the pressure on silver lately.
Yeah.
You know, buying, pulling that out of the market and making it more difficult for some of the big consumers to get their hands on it.
You stated in a presentation, I want to get this right, that silver is such a small holding in the world's investable assets, only 2.5%.
Not even.
Not even. Wow.
Yeah. So if you look at the world's investable assets, $261 trillion. Gold is about, remember right, it's about 6% of that, 6.5%. I mean, if you look at that chart, pie chart, there is a section of that, like a little sliver, that is about 2.5%. And silver does not even show up in the chart. So my guess is that it's within the 2.5% of other assets.
Yeah.
So if I had to pick a number, it's probably a tenth the size of gold, if not less.
Wow. We talked about China, what's going on there. Can you talk a bit about silver in terms of military defense?
It's interesting, and I think it's on purpose. But the application of silver in military, on the military side, in terms of equipment, in terms of communications equipment, or in terms of missiles, that kind of thing, there's no data on it. I have not seen any. All I've seen is estimates, people who have maybe some sort of insight into that. I've never seen it detailed by someone like the Silver Institute, for example. Even photovoltaics, which is the solar application of it, we see that broken out in terms of a line item from time to time in their reports, but not always.
Yeah.
But you know, what I have come across is that it's used in things like missiles.
Yeah.
I think the Tomahawk missile has quite a bit of silver in it, and then, you know, like so many things these days, armies and war is becoming AI and technologically driven, right? Robots, all sorts of things, and this is all very, you know, high metal consuming.
Yeah.
And it relies on silver a whole lot because you've got relays, you've got cameras, you've got processors, you've got, you know, all sorts of electronics that, I like to say silver is never more than about a meter away from you.
Yeah.
And it's in your phone, it's in your watch, it's in your, you know, it's in everything. We even find it in cornea replacements because it's a biocide, so it kills bacteria. It's really everywhere. And military is no different. But like I say, it's very difficult to come across real numbers on that. But it's potentially, the numbers I've seen is it could represent as much as 5% of annual demand.
I didn't know this. Am I right in saying that oil, other than oil, silver has the most applications?
Exactly. So it is the commodity after oil. Now, of course, consumption-wise, oil is much, much bigger.
Yeah.
Because it's a huge market, right? Supply of it is very different. But in terms of the number of applications, you're right. Something like 10,000 different applications of silver.
Historically, why is the manipulation of silver so consistent?
So, you know, there are all sorts of schools of thought on that. It's a small market. That makes it easier to manipulate. My view is that it does get manipulated in the very short term, but over the longer term, you know, it's driven by markets. Real supply and demand ultimately decide where it goes. But it's the size of the market just makes it easier to move around, push around.
And you think about strategic, I was saying to you, in the 20th century American history, FDR, Roosevelt manipulated, I didn't know this gentleman's name, but the oil baron Nelson Hunt, same, he ends up bankrupt in the 70s. I mean, it seems very consistent throughout the many, many decades.
Right. I mean, I think part of it is that It's money, it's strategic, and it's a small market. It's maybe a tenth the size of the gold market. Okay. And so it's easier to push silver around. It takes less buying and less selling to move the price around.
Sure.
And there have been issues with some, in terms of manipulation, something called spoofing, where you'd have traders go in, put in an offer to buy or to sell, and then other traders would see that offer, but it was there for perhaps a second or a few seconds, very short amount of time, and then they withdraw the order. But it was there long enough for someone else to see and act on it and say, oh, if this huge order is there to buy or to sell this amount of silver, then it's going in this direction or that direction. And so it would cause other traders to do things. And then, but because the order didn't actually go through, right, that spoofer didn't commit to it, but caused it to go in a certain direction, and then went and took advantage of the direction it was going.
You mentioned AI a few minutes ago. Let's move to data centers.
Yes.
The growing need because of that. Talk about how that's contributing to this surge in the price of silver.
It's very interesting because, if you go back only a couple of years at most, as AI became a big thing, data centers have been important for longer than that, but we are just generating so much data and storing it. Mm-hmm. And so the growth of data centers has just been sort of exponential. Yeah. And the US is by far has the biggest concentration of data centers and amongst the fastest growth. So all of these large tech companies have been building their own data centers and need to power them. So they're going to utilities, and the utilities are often telling them, we can't provide the kind of power that you need. We just, sorry, we can't do it. So some of the bigger ones first turned to nuclear. I think Microsoft went to sort of unused capacity at 3 Mile Island.
I was going to say they bought 3 Mile.
That's right. Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. And, they have the money, they have the means, and this is something that you can, with some effort and time, you can sort of turn back on. But to actually go out and build more nuclear power supply is a long and expensive process. It takes essentially about 15 years. Yeah. So at the time, about 2 years ago, I started saying, well, the alternative is going to be solar for a few reasons. It's fast to permit, quick to build, and so on. It's actually a tenth the time. It's 1.5 years to get a solar farm built. Yeah. If you are operating a data center and you have the land, you can actually build that solar farm right on site, and you're totally off the grid, so to speak. You are totally self-reliant. You're producing the power next door to where you need it. And so once you've got this sort of sunk cost, maintenance is a small additional cost. Now, there was a big strike against solar until about maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And that was, it's not baseload power like nuclear. Nuclear and that was one of the reasons I think some of the big tech companies went to it first. Right. You get constant power 24 hours. You don't get that with solar, but you're starting to. Right. Because of batteries. Batteries, which also consume silver, by the way, they have been a game changer. They are starting to make solar into a baseload power because you can produce the energy during the day and store it and then start to draw from the batteries at night. And that way you can make it a 24-hour source of power. And the cost of batteries is coming down by half over 5 years. And already in 2025, the forecast was that, we don't have sort of final numbers now, but the forecast was that they will have installed 60% of 2023 solar capacity equivalent in batteries. So we're getting close to a 1-for-1 battery to match solar. So that's amazing. Yeah, it's really it's going to be a big deal.
How is the price of silver affecting small cap miners and mining companies?
So that's really very interesting, and that's something I've been giving quite a bit of thought to because, people will look at the silver price and they'll think, geez, like I've missed it. I mean, I personally believe it's still going higher, not in a straight line, but I think that the miners, and especially the small cap miners, are actually the next opportunity in silver. Okay. And the reason I say that is, if you look at how analysts price projects or price cash flow, they'll look at a company and they'll say, okay, so your commodity, is priced at this level when you sell it. And many of them are still using $25 or $30 silver. And it's because they, for regulatory reasons and for, to be conservative, they look back and they say, okay, what's reasonable? What's a reasonable price to use for silver? And it has been relatively reasonable, let's say, still low, but $25, $30. So you have to realize that that means that the value they attribute to a company or to a project is based on $25 or $30 silver.
Right.
But we're at $100 silver. So as individual investors, we're not tied to working the way an analyst does. We can look at a project, look at a company and say, well, what if I price this at $80 or $90 silver? How much is that company worth now?
Right.
And that's an advantage that we have. And I think that's what has not been priced into the market yet. I think over the next few quarters, we're going to start to see, especially the producers, the silver producers, we're going to see the impact of much, much higher cash flow, much even higher than the analysts who will have adjusted their models for higher silver prices, but maybe to $40, $50. It's still half of what those companies are selling their silver at. And so I think that's the opportunity now. Over the next, I'm not saying it won't be volatile, but I do think that over the next perhaps 2 to even 3 years, you're going to see a big re-rate in a lot of these companies. Many have done very well last year, but I believe that there's a lot left to go over the next 2 to 3 years.
Which leads me to our final question. I always like when I talk to you, and you tend to be more right than ever wrong. It's crystal ball time when we get an expert like yourself. You were touching on it right there. I see you every January. What are we talking about this time next year? So nothing's guaranteed, but no, crystal ball it for me.
To be fair, I'm surprised how fast we got to $100.
Yeah.
So that was not what I had expected. That said, and I would not expect a repeat this year of what we had last year. That was really sort of an outlier. But that said, I think that we could easily see, in the $120 to maybe $140 range before the year is out. And that's still very, very healthy. So, I mean, if as I say, if there's a correction, I think that anyone who feels that they don't have sufficient exposure to silver, I would use that as an opportunity.
Let our viewers know one more time where they can read and all the things that you do. You've got a number of options here. Let them know.
Yeah. So we've got 2 newsletters. The first one we talked about earlier, Silver Advisor. I have a subscriber base, so a paid newsletter that goes into smaller companies, essentially things that have perhaps a little bit earlier stage. I feel for that reason, maybe a little bit more opportunity. There's a little bit more risk, but it does cover the entire sector. So any large caps all the way down to sometimes pre-discovery explorers, which are the highest risk. But, people can pick and choose from there, whatever suits their risk tolerance. So that's called Silver Stock Investor. It's been around now for 5 years and growing very well. And then the book, which came out about almost 3.5 years ago, 4 years ago, and really is there to explain to anyone who wants to kind of understand the silver market, the uses of silver, why it's important both industrially and has been a monetary metal for even longer than gold, and how these silver markets play out, how to take advantage, and how to build a portfolio, and that's the contribution. Yeah.
We appreciate you coming across the street from the convention center. Very, very busy time. Peter, always a pleasure. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you, Jim.
Peter Krauth, author, advocate, and a guy you want to turn to for all things silver. As he mentioned, all his information right there. For us, our information, smallcapinterviews.com. Contact us, info@smallcapinterviews.com. I'm Jim Gordon. Thank you for watching this edition of Small Cap Interviews.